Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. For today's video, we're going to be talking about another brand new palette from W7, and this time it's a dupe, and I'm pretty excited for it because this is the palette that I did want to pick up, and that is the brand new Howdy palette, which just came out last week. Now I know what you may be thinking, and yes, I did promise you some more looks using the Lovefest palette. That is still coming. I just didn't expect W7 to give us a brand new palette this soon. Like, we are ramping up the releases. Maybe slow down a little bit. It is a lot to keep up with. As you may have guessed from the outer packaging, this one is a dupe for the Urban Decay, I've forgotten the name, was it Wild West palette? I already can't remember. It's been a while since we've had an Urban Decay dupe. No, it's not. We got one at Christmas, but I haven't tried it. They gave us the new Naked Reloaded. Still no Ultraviolet palette though. A little bit disappointed because that's the one I really wanted, but I was still pretty excited to get this one. So I'm going to do this in my usual format, and as always, there will be timestamps in the description box if you want to skip ahead to any section. And as always, of course, just a quick disclaimer. Yes, W7 did send me this in PR, however, they haven't asked me to make this video today. They've not requested any content related to this palette, and there is no money being exchanged. I just love reviewing eyeshadow palettes on my channel. I am a little bit obsessed. I only recently decluttered my eyeshadow palettes, and I feel like we're already filling up that shelf really, really quickly. Anyway, let's start by talking about the details for this palette. So this is, of course, the Howdy palette from W7, which, as we said, is a dupe for the Urban Decay Naked Wild West. This one is a 12-pan palette, and this formula is an eyeshadow formula rather than a pressed pigment, which does seem to follow what we saw last year, 2 years ago. Oh my god, when did the Queen Bee palette come out? Oh my god, I think it was a year and a half ago. So yeah, 2020 it came out in. So that was an eyeshadow palette formula as well. The packaging on the outside is really, really gorgeous. We have this textured cardboard. It's really, really lovely and reflective. I'm really, really here for it. And price-wise, we are at £7.95 for this one. Now, the first thing that jumped out to me is that this is slightly more expensive than the Queen Bee, which was only £6.95. However, we're actually getting a lot more product in this one, even though we have the same number of eyeshadows. The Queen Bee had 10.2 grams, and this one has 14.4, so just over an extra 4 grams in the palette. So when we look at our cost per gram, we are actually quite a bit cheaper with this one. We're only at 55p per gram. You guys know me, I love value for money, I love affordable, so on the one hand, I'm really here for having a slightly larger palette. However, that does also mean that the Queen Bee palette is slightly smaller, and you guys know how I feel about palettes not being consistent with eyeshadow palettes formats. So the fact that these aren't exactly the same size, it kind of bothers me. It kind of does, but we will move on from it because, again, this is super, super affordable. I've just realized that when I do a video about a dupe, I normally talk about the price of the original palette, and it slipped my mind. I haven't even looked it up, so let me find that for you. All right, the original Urban Decay palette is £46, which is quite a bit more, and we're not even getting 1 gram per shadow. We're getting 0.95 grams, and our cost per gram is just over £4. So again, in terms of value for money, we're doing really, really well with this one. On the back, we just have the usual information. So we just have our diagram here and our ingredient list there. So we've only got 2 different formulas in here, one for the mattes and one for the shimmers. And as with all of the recent releases we've seen from W7, we also have a little symbol to say that the product is vegan and vegetarian friendly. And then just quickly on the inside, we just have a mirror here, so same as the Urban Decay palettes do. And we do still get a double-sided brush with this one. We have like a flat brush and then a foam tip, which can be really useful with some glitter eyeshadows. Personally, it's not something that I'm ever going to reach for, and I really wish that W7 would stop making these at this point. I just feel like it's a bit of a waste. But that is it for the details of the palette, so let's have a quick little swatch party and see what we think of the shades. All right, we should hopefully be able to do this whole palette in one go. So let's start off with the first shade, which is Badlands, which you guys can barely see because, as always, it is basically a shade that matches me. Then we have Mustang. You know what, considering that these are eyeshadows, they pick up. Like, I am getting fallout and kick up there. Then we have Saloon. Our first 2 metallics are Ace High and Lone Star. Oh, okay, Lone Star is really reflective. Actually, that's quite nice. It has a coolness to it as well. Like, it's not just a silver, almost like a bit of a lilac. But I will say, I did try filming with this palette already. I'll talk to you guys about that a little bit more when we get into the tutorial. And I tried to pick this one up with my fingers, and I do feel like it's starting to be like a little bit glazed over, almost as though it's getting hard pan. Nothing too bad for now, but I'm definitely gonna keep an eye on that. Next, we have Wrangler. Again, that's quite a cool toned grey, like a little bit lilac-y. Then our 2 other metallics, we have Showdown and Buckaroo. And then we have four mattes to finish off. We have Yeehaw, Saddle Up, Roosted, and Chaps. Alright, there we go. These are actually really, really good swatches, especially considering that this is not a pressed pigment palette. The amount of fallout on these darker shades and even on the lighter shades, like they're so chunky. I really, really didn't expect it. Not from an eyeshadow palette. The metallics have picked up really well, but they are very plain, I will say. They are just metallics. The most interesting one is going to be Lone Star. I feel like it has a little bit of glitter. The other ones, they're just your plain run-of-the-mill metallics, but it does look nice. So enough about the swatches. Let's go and see how the eyeshadow palette performs in the tutorial. Alright guys, so as always, I have primed my eye with my P. Louise base. I've also done my under eye. And before jumping in, I do just want to mention that I have already tried to film with this palette once. I didn't really like the way that things were looking. I wasn't feeling super inspired. And to kind of help me out, I thought I would have a look on Instagram, on YouTube, to try and find some looks, give me a little bit of inspiration. And I have to say, it has been a little bit of a struggle. I feel like a lot of the looks that I was seeing when really, you know, getting my creative juices flowing, and that is absolutely no shade to any of the creators out there. They've all done a fantastic job, but I think it is the color scheme. It kind of made me glad that I didn't fork out for the real thing, because that would have been a lot of money to spend to then not be super inspired. But good news, I did manage to find a look that I'm going to be taking inspiration from today, and that look is by Mel Thompson, who unfortunately is no longer with us. I will of course link her video down below. The look is just absolutely stunning. Yeah, I feel like it has given me the inspiration I need. I feel like I'm also going to try switching up my technique a little bit today. That is a lot more talking than I was planning on doing, so let me get started. And I'm going to start with a Morphe M433, so quite a big brush, and I'm going to go into the shade, Saddle Up, I think. Oh wow, there is a lot of kick up in the pan. Can you see that? Even though this isn't pressed pigments, I did not expect that much kick up. I'm just going to make sure there are no creases, and I'm gonna start popping that into the crease. And because I'm using a different brush to what I normally would, and again because this isn't a pressed pigment palette, I'm going a lot more lightly, just using a very different technique to what I normally would, but I think it's gonna work a bit better with these shadows. I'm gonna pick up a bit more. So I'm following my crease, and as always at the back, I'm just following the shape of my brow around a little bit more, which just helps to give a little bit of lift. Otherwise I'd be going straight down. Right now this isn't looking super pigmented, but obviously I've got in with a much lighter hand than I normally would. And I feel like for the amount of product that I've used, it's absolutely fine. I mean, it's a brown, it's gonna be fine. I'm just gonna use the same brush. I'm gonna go into Yeehaw that's next to it, and I'm gonna pop that on, kind of half on, half off, I guess. Well, it's quite a big brush, so it's going to get everywhere anyway. That's just going to warm up the crease. Okay, that is really nice. That's building up over the top really nicely. Just warming that up really well. If you compare like how cool tone this is to this being a little bit warmer, really nice shade. Oh, my brush does seem to be losing hairs, which is a little bit annoying. That's what I get for using Morphe. They're super cheap, so they're not the best brushes, but they do the job. It's looking a little bit messy right now because I took the first colour up a little bit too high, but I'm gonna come and blend that out in a second. But yeah, absolutely no complaints from me there in terms of blending these two on top of each other. Yeah, really nice. So next I'm gonna take a big fluffy brush. This is an M441, still from Morphe, and I'm gonna go into Saloon, and oh my god, these shades are picking up so much. Like, I did not expect that. And I'm gonna use it to blend. So here I'm really trying to soften that out, give myself a really nice soft gradient. Take a bit more. And because this shade is so light, I can really take it up quite high and it's not too jarring, just creating a really nice soft blend. I do feel like I've got a little bit of harshness at the front. I feel like maybe I just added a little bit too much product there at the beginning, which is a little bit annoying, and it kind of got stuck in there. I feel like maybe you wouldn't have this happen with a different primer maybe. I just want to deepen that up a little bit, so I'm going to take a bit more of Saddle Up. Really take that on the outer portion of the eye. And then this time I'm going to switch to a clean M433, so same brush, just a clean one, and take some more of Yeehaw. I'm going to take this a bit further forwards into the crease this time, and again just keep deepening that up a bit. I mean, the blend is looking lovely, really, really smooth. They're just working really, really well. No issues with blending here. Just adding a bit more to really deepen the outside. I want the inside to just be a lot brighter in comparison. And then back into Saloon, just to finish blending it all out. In the original video, she did use the lighter shade to just highlight the brow bone, so I'm going to take it on a Morphe M456. It's called Badlands in this palette. I'm using it more just to smooth that top out. I don't know if maybe it was more of a satin formula in the original Urban Decay, because it just feels kind of matte here, so it doesn't feel like it's highlighting very much. Also, it's basically the colour of my skin tone. So if you've got slightly deeper skin than me, you should get a bit more of a highlighting effect, but I'm just going to finish softening out that top edge. Alright, then next we're going to jump into the part that I really, really liked about this look. She went into that dark matte teal shade and popped it on the outer corner. So in this palette it's called Roosted, and I'm taking another M456 for that. Again, a lot of kick up in the palette, and she just popped it on the outer third. This one kind of reminds me of the ABH Subculture palette. Cannot remember the name of the shade, but do you guys know the one I mean? So I'm going to pop that on and blend it into the browns. I'm going to add a bit more. I definitely feel like the one in the Urban Decay palette stayed quite bright, and I feel like maybe that's not the case as much in the W7 palette. Kind of wish I did have the original so I could compare it for you guys. But also, as I said, kind of glad I didn't end up buying it. So I'm just blending it into the crease, but I'm trying not to take it up too high. And then I'm going to take a touch of Saddle just to try blending them in. You do want to be careful blending them in because they are such different colours. You don't want it to get too muddy. So I'm taking my time here. And then, no extra product. I'm going to take my other M433 just to help blend. Or should I? I'm going to add literally a touch more. And then I'm just going to take my big blending brush to blend out, but I'm not adding any more product. Oh, there we go. So we've just got plenty of depth in the outer corner. It is looking a bit grey, obviously, where we've blended the two in, just again because of colour theory really more than anything else. I'm just going to add a little bit more of Roosted because I do really, really want that colour on the outer corner. Like, I want it to be visible. I think I'm just going to add just a tiny bit more of Yeehaw, just because I feel like the outer corner needs a little bit more lift. And then the tiniest amount of Saloon just to blend. Alright, overall pretty happy with the experience with the matte so far. I do have a little bit of fallout as expected. I mean, they're nicely pigmented overall. I have built them up pretty slowly, so they didn't kind of immediately come across as super pigmented, but that is just a difference in technique. And that deep teal pigmentation on that, absolutely lovely. I've got no issues with patchiness. They blended in together really, really well. The kind of only closest thing to an issue I would say is literally just the teal into the browns, because they're not the easiest shades to blend together. But other than that, pretty good experience so far. So we're going to try jumping into the shimmers now, and I'm going to go into the shade Buckaroo. Now, I do normally tend to find that I actually prefer the eyeshadow shimmer formula with W7. I find it's a lot easier to use in their pressed pigment formula, but I will say, looking at that shade Buckaroo right now, it doesn't like kind of speak to me or anything. It doesn't get me excited. I'm going to take it on my Morphe M124. We're going to try it and see how it goes. Okay, a little bit of kick up in the pan again. Ooh. So obviously right now I haven't got a base on or anything or any glitter glue to help it stick better. There's no issues in terms of it actually being laid down, like that's working quite well. It's sticking, it's not crumbly or anything. It's not super metallic though, so let me try spraying my brush. We're gonna see what happens. So I'm just gonna use some of my Revolution spray. And I've picked up a little bit more product. It feels like it is a little bit more intense actually, to be fair, not massively. I feel like spraying the brush maybe does help a little bit. I'm gonna bring it back to the teal, into the crease. I'm gonna come and blend it all in a second, don't worry. So now I'm gonna take a little bit more of Roosted and we're gonna get a nice transition going here. And then for the crease, I'm going to take a clean Morphe M514 just to soften that all out. In fact, I'm going to take a tiny bit more of EHAR. No issues with application on that one. Again, I do tend to find that the W7 metallic eyeshadows are easier to work with than their pressed pigments. I just don't find the shade super exciting. And even having sprayed it, yes, I feel like it maybe intensified it a little bit, made it even easier to apply, but it's never going to be my favorite shade in the palette. It's not super exciting. So now for the lower lash line, I'm gonna go into more of Saddle Up, and I'm taking it just on a small flat brush, and I'm just gonna run that across the lash line. Bring it back into the outer corner as well, just to make sure we have a nice transition. That's smoking out pretty well, I've got no complaints there. And then I think I'm just gonna take a Morphe M456 from earlier. I'm just gonna take a little bit of EHAR again, just to blend that out, warm up the lower lash line a little bit. All right, now this is where things should now get a little bit more exciting, because we're gonna jump into a couple more of the metallics, and starting off with Ace High on a Morphe M431. I'm gonna pop that at the front. Please stand by for excitement, apparently. See, when she put the Urban Decay one on in her video on top of this shade, it was like really bright and really exciting. But right now this isn't layering super well, so again, let me just spray that. Oh, okay, there we go. That's a lot better. Yes. Popping that at the front. That has worked really well. You guys know me, I normally can't see like much of a difference when I spray my brush with a metallic, but in this case, that's actually done what we needed it to. And then on a Morphe M508, I'm gonna go into the color Showdown, which is the metallic turquoise. There's so much gold actually. Let me just clean that up really quickly. Just gonna get rid of the gold here. Pop a little more base on. All right, and now let me go into Showdown. Okay, that is going on, that is pretty. Not super reflective though. You know what, I'm just gonna spray my brush again because it really does seem to be working with this palette. Ah, there we go. Just gonna come in with my flat brush back here, just to blend them in a little. Now, do I really like how this is looking in terms of the colors? Yes, I do. But it maybe feels a little bit one-dimensional, I'm not gonna lie. So I think we need a little bit of glitter. I think we need to amp it up. For the top inner corner where we've put the gold shade Ace High, I'm gonna use my pigment in Gatsby from Peaches and Cream. It's not the exact same shade, but I think it will do nicely. I'm gonna take that same brush again and I am just gonna spray it. There we go, I just want to add some sparkle. Just going to bring it over a little bit. And then for the lower lash line, I think I'm going to go in with this one, which is Northern Lights by Sample Beauty. And again, spraying my brush. And it's not quite the exact same shade, it's a little bit more blue. Oh yes, look at that. Look at that! That is super pretty. And then right in the inner corner, in the original video, she took again that lighter shade which she used on the brow bone. Now that I've got the pigments and everything, I don't think it's gonna work, but I'm gonna try it anyway. So that's the shade Badlands, just on a little pencil brush. kind of doing something, but not really. I wish that lighter shade did have like a satin to it or a shimmer. I kind of like how it's softening the green and the turquoise though. That is nice. I think it's just almost a little bit too dark for me to highlight with, you know. For my lower lash line, I'm gonna take this one from Planet Revolution. This is just called Light Brown, and it's a really nice lighter shade of brown, obviously, as the name indicates. I feel like I almost just need like a little bit more depth here. It's looking a little bit patchy. I'm just gonna take the M456 that I used for, what was it, roosted earlier. I'm just gonna take a bit of chaps just to make sure we've got a really nice smooth transition into the outer corner, because I'm not sure we do right now. So I'm really softly adding that and being really careful. I do feel like the inner corner is looking a little bit sad now, just where we've got the matte next to those two pigments. So I'm gonna go into this one, which is from Shrine Cosmetics. This is just iridescent white. Same again, I'm gonna spray my brush. I'm just gonna use the same one I used for that inner corner, and I'm gonna pop it on. There we go. It's just a little bit more interesting immediately, isn't it? All right, and then last step, promise. I'm gonna take my Revlon So Fierce vinyl eyeliner. This is Mighty Mocha, just because I do feel like it needs some kind of liner. And I'm gonna blend it out using the flat brush I used on my lower lash line. I'm just keeping it very soft and smoky. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of Saddle Up and I'm going to press that into the liner. I'm just going to give it one last little blend out here with my big Morphe brush. And now I'm going to leave it there. Alright, so that is it for the look now. I like the way it looks. It's just kind of jarring because it's very different to what I normally do, but I do like the kind of multi-dimensional aspect to it, like having the dark blue here and then the lighter one here on the inside. It's just a bit different to what I normally do. Do I think it looks as nice as Mel's did? No, I think hers looked like a million times better. I think she did a fantastic job, but I really like how sparkly it is with the pigments on the inside. You know, I can't help myself. I have to have some sparkle. So I'm just gonna leave it here now. I'm gonna go and do the rest of my makeup, and when I come back, we will have a chat about my final thoughts on the palette. All right, guys, here is the finished look. I hope, as always, that you like it. W7 did also send me their newest lipsticks with the palette, so I went with the shade L Word. The formula's really nice. It's really creamy, really comfortable, but the color is a little bit pinker than I would have wanted, especially considering that these have come out with this release. I felt like they all looked quite cool toned. I would have really liked a brown. I will put together a little try on video for you guys that I'll post to reels and to shorts, so it might already be up by the time I post this. If it is, I will link it up in the cards for you guys. So let's go into my final thoughts on the palette. In terms of pros for this palette, as always, value for money is definitely a big one for me. It does work out to be really affordable, and it is nice to see a dupe for this Urban Decay palette because I do feel like it was one that was really popular. Again, it was one that I almost picked up, but kind of am glad that I didn't, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Pigmentation, also super impressed with. The metallics maybe aren't the most exciting. I did feel the need to use a pigment with them, but also not the worst to use. Like, they weren't chunky, there was no issues picking them up or anything. They did just need a little bit of spraying, and they just haven't got like anything special to them, I would say. Basically, like, they're not super reflective, they're not super glittery. You may well need to top this palette up with a pigment. So I think overall for me this is a pretty positive experience. Again, the only thing is maybe the metallics aren't super interesting, but I do think I'm just going to struggle overall with inspiration with this palette. So that's not so much what W7 have done, that is based on the original Urban Decay color scheme. I feel like it doesn't really speak to me. I think I'm either going to get really inspired by this palette, get a lot of use out of it, or it's going to end up going in my next declutter. Like, I just don't feel like there's really an in the middle with this one. And again, not an issue with W7's quality. I think for me it is just the color scheme. I just don't know if me and this palette are in it for the long haul. I don't know at this stage. But overall, this is a decent palette, especially for the price. I thought the pigmentation was lovely. You're getting so much value for money out of this one. If you are someone who did really want the Urban Decay palette and you just couldn't justify spending that amount of money on it, I think price-wise, this is a great dupe. If this is a color scheme that you know you're gonna get use out of, then I would go for it. So guys, that is it for today's video. I do hope, as always, that you found it helpful. Definitely let me know in the comments what you think of this palette and whether or not you're gonna pick it up. If you enjoyed this video, then do please, as always, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already, then please make sure to hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye guys.